Patience, persistence, and perspiration make for an unbeatable combination for success. So that's a quote by Napoleon Hill, and it kind of ties in nicely, because one of the things that I really believe to be the most overlooked components of training is patience. You know, I honestly believe that it's far better in not just training but life to encourage things rather than force them. You know, I think it's better to encourage people rather than force them, and I think it's better to encourage progress rather than to force it, because what the risk you run when you start forcing things is that you break things. And as I sort of touched on in yesterday's video, is that our biggest obstacle to progress is breaking or getting injured. But in a world where everyone wants everything now and we're always looking for shortcuts, patience is a lost art. And for me, patience is just another form of discipline. It's restraining ourselves from the eagerness to progress, because we understand the process. We put trust in the process. Because what you get with patience is time to lay sort of broad and strong foundations of work capacity. And work capacity is one of the most overlooked components of fitness. Work capacity, simply put, is the total amount of training that you can perform, recover from, and to adapt positively to. So in short, the greater our work capacity, the more training that we can handle. And at the end of the day, I'm sorry to break it to you, what lies between me, you, and everyone else and our goals is our ability to perform more work. You know, so one of the greatest minds on sort of training and the adaptation of training was the late Mel Siff, and he wrote an amazing book called Super Training. It's like chewing tar, but there's some gems in there. And he had a quote: work capacity refers to the general ability of the body as a machine to produce work of different intensities and durations using the appropriate energy systems of the body. So in other words, patience leads to more training leads to greater work capacity leads to more efficiency, and more efficiency leads to greater improvement over time. So that's a win-win-win-win. And this kind of ties in beautifully to today, right? Because today's Friday, and in the early stages of any training block, I like to dedicate a lot of the work to developing work capacity. So Fridays for me is general work capacity. So you can develop work capacity as it relates to running, you can develop work capacity as it relates to heavy strength training. You know, everything we do is a skill. But one of the things you want to do is what I like to term sort of this blue collar work ethic. You know, it's to put together programs that aren't CrossFit per se, but are utilizing a variety of different tools to raise your general physical preparedness. And Fridays in the first few weeks of this training block is going to be dedicated to that. So let's get started. Right guys, so we're back with a little bit of voiceover action. I want to give you a bit of a rundown as to my thoughts behind today's session. So as always, I don't mean to bang on about it, you need to make sure you're warming up properly, you're training regularly, you need to look after the body. So make sure you're moving well, otherwise you will not be performing well. So go through a good warm up and then we'll get into it. So I started off today's session, like I said, it was a work capacity session, 5 exercises, 30 seconds of work, 15 seconds rest, 2 rounds. I went through push-up variations, mountain climbers, band pull-aparts, lateral step overs for some athleticism, and then hollow hold to crunch before getting into dynamic effort squats. So bands here are to encourage acceleration throughout the movement. I want to make sure I'm training those type 2 muscle fibers that running does not train. So I did 6 sets of 3 reps with 40 seconds rest between each set. So again, this is developing that work capacity to replicate explosive movements. Following this, I went into the same thing, but with pull-ups. So 6 sets of 3, focusing on intention on every concentric movement. So I hold, drive up nice and fast, control down, drive up nice and fast. Again, 6 sets of 3 reps with 40 seconds rest before I went into my what I call my blue collar kind of conditioning. And I went for walking lunges, dips, and chest supported rows, essentially lower body push pull. And I went 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can do this for time. Today was absolutely cooking. So the goal was just to get through the work. Weights are sub-maximal, and it's just about work capacity. So that gives you a little bit of an overview of today's session. If you have any questions, obviously, let me know. So hopefully today's video gives you a little bit of insight into the importance of developing work capacity. Now, one thing I will add is the concept of work capacity isn't purely just the pursuit of work, right? So, because you also need to make sure you're keeping an eye on the quality of output, because with work capacity, what we're looking to do is to be able to replicate outputs for a longer period of time. So to drag yourself through a session where all of a sudden like the form deteriorates, the quality of the work deteriorates, that's no longer work capacity, that's just a slogfest, right? So as you could see, maybe when I do my squats, like those dynamic squats, what I'm looking for there is I want the last set to be better than the first set. So we don't just want fatigue to come in and catch on, because what we're trying to do is to combat fatigue. That is work capacity, to maintain positions and postures under varying amounts of fatigue. So if we're trying to be explosive, as I'm trying to be on those dynamic effort squats and pull-ups, it's that I want those last reps to be just as quick as the first reps, because that's a sign that I'm fit enough to handle that density of work. So I was having 30 seconds rest between sets. If all of a sudden those squats look sloppy on the last set, I need to take longer rest, because I'm not fit enough to be able to sustain that quality of work over that duration. So that's just something to take into consideration, because again, you haven't got to look too hard around commercial health clubs and CrossFit gyms to see that a lot of them is not developing work capacity, it's developing poor movement efficiency. Because what happens is that due to the length of the session or the weights that are being used, is that too much fatigue is being taken into the system, which means that you are merely just dragging yourself through the session. There's no quality at the back end of that, and there's nothing to build upon, because we've dug ourselves a hole that's going to be hard to get out of tomorrow, and we're going to continue to go into that thing. So the goal here is to make that hole just deep enough so that we can get out and recover from it, so that we can dig again tomorrow, but not so deep that we're stuck in it. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into what I mean by work capacity, and showing you today's session, which was primarily a work capacity session, but it's heavily focused on quality of outputs and quality of movement. So those are the key ingredients for work capacity for me, and something that you never really want to stray too far from. So hopefully you found this useful, and I will see you tomorrow.